The fluorescent lights of the grocery store cast harsh shadows across Maria's weathered hands as she stared at the price tag on the baby formula. $28.99. The numbers blurred through her unshed tears as she felt the weight of her empty wallet pressing against her chest like a stone. Her 6-month-old daughter Sophia had been crying all morning, hungry and inconsolable, while Maria counted and recounted the crumpled bills she'd scraped together from couch cushions and old coat pockets. $23.47. Not enough. Never enough. Behind her in line, billionaire tech entrepreneur David Chen adjusted his Hermès Tilde d'Iris tie and glanced impatiently at his Patek Philippe watch. He'd stopped by this modest neighborhood grocery store only because his usual Whole Foods was closed for renovations, and he needed to grab some organic coffee before his afternoon board meeting. The delay was already making him 15 minutes behind schedule, and his assistant would be calling soon about the helicopter waiting on the rooftop of his downtown office building. David's attention shifted from his phone to the young woman in front of him as she began removing items from her cart with trembling hands. First went the baby formula, placed carefully back on the shelf with a tenderness that spoke of heartbreak. Then a small jar of baby food, followed by a package of diapers. Each item returned with the same gentle precision, as if she were tucking away pieces of her hope. Maria kept only the essentials: a loaf of day-old bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a small container of milk that would have to stretch for both her morning coffee and Sophia's cereal. She avoided eye contact with the cashier, a kind elderly man named Robert who'd watched this same scene play out too many times in this neighborhood. The shame burned in her cheeks as she handed over her carefully counted bills, leaving her with exactly 53 cents to last until her next paycheck in 5 days. As Maria hurried towards the exit, David found himself abandoning his place in line. Something about the way she'd handled those baby items, the quiet dignity in her struggle, had struck him in a way that years of board meetings and profit margins never could. He followed her at a distance, watching as she loaded her meager groceries into a rusted shopping cart and began the long walk home, her shoulders squared against the world despite the weight she carried. The autumn wind picked up as Maria pushed her cart down Elm Street, past the boarded-up storefronts and faded for rent signs that had become the neighborhood's defining features since the factory closure. David trailed behind in his Tesla, moving slowly through the pothole-riddled streets that his tax bracket had never required him to navigate. When Maria turned into the entrance of Sunset Gardens Mobile Home Park, David parked across the street and watched her disappear into a small, weathered trailer with a crooked mailbox that read Gonzalez. That evening, David sat in his penthouse office, staring out at the city lights that sparkled like stars beneath him. But instead of seeing the empire he'd built, he kept thinking about Maria's hands as she'd put back that baby formula. He thought about his own daughter, Emma, who was Sophia's age and had never known want. Emma's nursery was filled with organic everything, the finest clothes, toys that cost more than Maria probably made in a month. The contrast felt like a physical weight in his chest. David pulled out his laptop and began typing. By midnight, he'd drafted a business plan unlike any he'd ever created. Not for profit margins or market expansion, but for something his MBA professors had never taught him about: a redemption. The next morning, Maria woke to Sophia's hungry cries and the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. The bread would have to be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She'd given the last of the milk to Sophia the night before, and the empty refrigerator seemed to mock her maternal instincts. As she stepped outside to shake out a blanket, she noticed a small grocery bag sitting beside her door. Inside, she found baby formula, diapers, baby food, and a note written in careful handwriting, "For Sophia. From someone who believes every mother deserves support. No need to thank me or find me. Just take care of your beautiful daughter. Maria sank onto her front steps, clutching the formula to her chest as tears finally came. In a world that had seemed determined to break her spirit, someone had seen her struggle and responded with pure kindness. She didn't know that across the street, David sat in his car, watching her reaction through tears of his own. But David's plan was just beginning. Over the following weeks, mysterious deliveries began appearing throughout Sunset Gardens Mobile Home Park. Groceries for the elderly couple in Unit 12 who lived on Social Security. School supplies for the 3 children in Unit 18 whose mother worked double shifts at the diner. Winter coats appeared on doorsteps just as the temperature began to drop. David had instructed his assistant to hire a team of private investigators, not to spy on anyone, but to quietly identify needs and coordinate deliveries. He converted an empty warehouse on the other side of town into a distribution center, staffed it with people from the neighborhood, and created what he privately called Operation Dignity, a network of anonymous support that operated like his business ventures, but with love as the bottom line instead of profit. Maria began to notice changes in her community. Mrs. Rodriguez next door was smiling again, her arthritis medication mysteriously appearing when she couldn't afford the prescription. The Martinez family's car was suddenly running smoothly after months of breakdown anxiety. Children were wearing new shoes to school, and the community garden at the park's entrance had been restored with fresh soil and seedlings. 3 months later, David received an unexpected visitor at his office. Maria stood in his reception area, wearing a clean dress and holding Sophia, who had grown chubby and content. His assistant had tried to turn her away, but Maria had been insistent. "I know it was you," she said simply when David appeared. "The security camera at Murphy's Grocery caught your license plate that day you followed me home." David's carefully constructed anonymity crumbled as he looked into her eyes. "I just wanted to help," he said quietly. "You did more than help," Maria replied, her voice steady and strong. "You reminded an entire community that we matter, that we're seen." She paused, shifting Sophia to her other arm. "But I didn't come here to thank you, Mr. Chen. I came here with a proposal." Maria pulled out a folder from her bag, filled with handwritten notes and photographs. "I've been documenting everything you've done, and I've been talking to my neighbors. We want to help you expand this, not just to other neighborhoods, but other cities. I have a degree in social work that I never got to use because life got in the way. But I understand these communities in ways your investigators can't." David stared at the folder, then at Maria's determined face. In that moment, he realized that his greatest business venture hadn't been the tech company that made him billions. It was the partnership he was about to enter with a woman who had taught him that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in the dignity restored to a mother buying formula for her child. 6 months later, the Chen Gonzalez Foundation had distributed over $2 million in direct aid across 15 cities, always maintaining the same principle of anonymous dignity that had started with a can of baby formula and a mother's quiet strength. David had found something more valuable than any fortune, a purpose that made his wealth matter. And Maria had found something she thought was lost forever, a hope that tomorrow could be different from today. Sophia took her first steps in the foundation's headquarters, toddling between her mother's arms and the desk of the billionaire who had learned that following someone home could lead you to exactly where you needed to be.